What's up, everyone? This is the Socio guy here today, and welcome to lesson number 3 of O-level sociology. I will be continuing from where I left off in my previous week's lesson, so if you want a refresher, go check that out. The lesson is up on our IGTV for you to view. So what I'll be talking about today are the two major perspectives in sociology, and these two major perspectives are the consensus and the conflict approaches to studying society. And they pretty much crop up in every chapter that you study, from family to education to media, and they show the link between institutions and people, people and social change, and institutions and social change. So why don't we dive right in and discuss what exactly the consensus view is. So the consensus view states that society is kind of like the human body, and this is a very easy analogy to understand what the consensus sociologists say. By the way, another name for the consensus view is also functionalism or structural functionalism. So a good way to understand what this is to imagine the human body. So think of all your institutions such as religion, family, the media, the economy, all as being vital organs in the human body, and they all serve a particular purpose. Now, if any one of these organs kind of, goes bad, or for a lack of a better word, fails, then the whole system collapses. There is social instability, there is disharmony, and the consensus sociologists, they basically state that in order for this balance to maintain, all of these organs must be working together. So they're all kind of interlinked. It's not just about the failure of these organs or these different institutions. It also has to do with minute changes. For example, if there's a change in family, that could have wide-reaching impacts on religion, that could have impacts on education. A good way to understand how institutions impact each other and make room for each other is to look at how society changed in the pre- and the post-industrial period. Now, in the pre-industrial period, there was a subsistence-based agricultural economy which didn't require high levels of education, and family sizes were generally very large to work on these subsistence farms. But as industrialization happened, the needs of the economy changed, and that caused family sizes to become smaller, education to take more of a precedence, because in order to work in factories, people needed a certain skill level. Family sizes got smaller because there was urbanization, a consequence of this industrialization. And in order to be geographically mobile, it made more sense to have smaller family sizes. Now, coming back to the point of maintaining social stability, how is that maintained according to this school of thought? They say that there is what is known as a value consensus. I hope everyone can see that. I might just step a bit off frame so you can see all of this. So the value consensus basically states that the norms, values, and beliefs in society that we all ascribe to have been agreed upon by us together in a mutual way. There's a mutual understanding of how things should work, of how society should function. So a consequence of this value consensus is social stability. Now, stability, sorry, my spelling is pretty awful, so let's just carry on from that. So, according to the consensus sociologists, we'll just get rid of this. You can also, aside from having the analogy of a human body, you can kind of imagine society to be at an equilibrium. This is where society is at all times, according to them. There's always an up and down movement. I mean, you could be here on the graph, but eventually through changes and accommodation of the institutions, social norms and values changing, society always ends up in here. Now, there is quite an interesting implication of society always being at this equilibrium, but we will get to that in a later lesson. Or you could actually just come to my class and listen to me talk about that for like 2 hours, because it is quite interesting. So that's enough about the consensus view, a little brief overview about it. Why don't we move to what is known as the conflict approach? Now, the consensus view, we know it's all about harmony, social stability, a value consensus, people agreeing to things, and society being at an equilibrium. Now, by just reading this name, conflict, we know that this is not going to be about social stability or harmony. In fact, the conflict view is all about how power differentials, power differentials between different groups in society create social change. Now, this power differential leads to a struggle, and this struggle leads to social change eventually. It's a very slow and kind of accumulative process that happens over a period of decades or maybe even hundreds of years. It's not instantly obvious, but it takes time to see the changes. Now, a key proponent of the conflict view, well, not a proponent, the founder on whose theory this view is based on, is a guy that maybe some of you are familiar with, and that is Karl Marx. Now, Marx basically spoke about how the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, the bourgeoisie being the owners of the means of production, and the proletariat being the working class. He said that the owners, the people who own these means of production, exploit the working class, and the working class is so powerless that they can't fight back against them. And eventually, what Marx said would happen is that a proletariat revolution would happen and overthrow the bourgeoisie. But this dude was really wrong, and that proletariat revolution never really happened. So another key school of thought in conflict view is the feminist perspective, because again, the feminist perspective looks at power differentials between the two sexes. It looks at how the patriarchy uses its power, uses social institutions to suppress women and prevent them from achieving their full human potential. So conflict theory is actually very interesting to study because for me it is a bit closer to real life, because we know there's always a struggle between different groups because everyone wants power and no one wants to be subjugated. So in order to achieve this power or achieve social change, you need to fight for it, and society, according to them, is not here. It's not at this equilibrium. This whole thing, according to them, is wrong. Society is always in a state of flux. So that pretty much covers it for today's little overview on the consensus and conflict approaches. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and stay tuned and check out my lesson next week. Take care. Bye.